I'd like to talk about documenting your project in Revit. And by that, I mean setting up sheets of drawings, and putting them together so that they can be printed. And there are a few last touches we can add to our plan. I often somehow think of these when I go to print. One is putting dimensions on the floor plan. And we touched earlier on putting these dimensions in when we centered the columns. So it's the same idea. You go to the Annotate ribbon. There you go. Here's the Annotate ribbon. And again, like before, I like to use the aligned dimension. Okay? And there are a few typical things that you want to dimension. For example, you always want to dimension interior partitions, and you also want to dimension kind of the finished face of existing conditions. And if you're not familiar with that term, it just means the sort of finished surface of whatever the substrate might be. Now, one trick is with interior partitions, you dimension to the center line. And this is what we did earlier. See how I get that dashed line indicating the center of the wall? Now, with my dimension string running here, with existing exterior walls, you typically do the center, the face of those walls. So up on the toolbar area here, there is an option for how the dimensions are placed. You can just click on the down arrow and choose wall faces. Okay. There's a couple of different options with greater subtleties that aren't really very valuable at this point in time. Anyway, now you can see there's a dashed line. It's a solid dashed line on that outside wall, but just on the interior face of the outside wall. Same here. I can click on this wall to place the dimension. And then you drag the dimension string off to the side. So it's a good idea to at least get a few dimensions of existing conditions. And here, let's do another one. Let's go to Annotate, Aligned, and I'll click these outer walls here, but then I'll use the center line for these interior partitions. Okay. Now, as I drag the dimension string off, you'll notice that it now overlaps with the section marker. Okay. You don't want overlaps. It's really bad form. And what you can do, if you click on the symbol for the section, there's a grip here, an adjuster, which allows you to drag the marker up high without actually changing the limits of what is cut in the section drawing. So those are some basic dimensions you can put in. You can also do things like dimension clearances around doors. This is particularly important if you are, say, doing a project where you don't have control over the finishes. Maybe the existing doors are in a masonry wall or something like that where they're pretty inflexible. So here we can put this dimension in here, and it will tell us that there is enough space, usually about 18 inches, for a direct approach door. Anyway, again, as I mentioned, overlaps are not so sporty. They don't look good. So I can select my dimension using the Modify tool, and there are grips specific to dimensions. Here there is a single dot that is for dragging the text. And when I drag the text, you see how it creates a little itty-bitty kind of leader line. Revit knows that sometimes it just gets a little too crowded in your drawing. All right? Now, the other thing that you can add to kind of gussy up your floor plan, in addition to kind of clearing up all of these overlaps, is you can put a couple of room names in there. And that's really pretty easy as long as we're on the Annotate ribbon. There is an option for text. And text works pretty similar manner to most of our other pieces of software. The only trick is that Revit, by default, it has just a solid piece of text. All of the text styles here are available right in the same location. So if you just want a piece of text, you can click on your screen and draw a box and have it say, whatever it is that you want to say. In this case, I'm going to write existing dining room. Okay. Now, if I want to say center the text, you can select the text icon with the select command, and some of the basic options are available: right justify, left justify. Okay. To edit the actual text, you have to come in and double click inside the kind of text box in order to get at some of those further features. For example, if you wanted a numbered list, if you want underlining or other fun things. Also, by the way, you can paste from the clipboard, which means you can type in a different program that maybe has a more robust spell checker. Revit has a spell check. It's F7, the function key 7. If you're on a Mac like I am, you have to hold down function and F7 for it to work. Anyway, so there's a nice room name, and I'm going to make a copy by control-click dragging the text. Remember that little trick? It's a quick way to make a copy. And this one, I'll call it existing kitchen. Okay, whoops. As before, if you want to move the text, there are grips for doing that. Just click and drag on the grips. If your scrolling of text isn't working great, you can make the box either wider or smaller. You can even rotate the text if, I don't know, you're listing to port or something like that. Anyway, so those are some basic options. And in this case, we don't really need much because we are not doing a whole lot to this project. The other thing that is a possibility with text, let me go back to the Annotate ribbon and text, is adding text with a leader line. And I personally tend to like the leader line that's kind of an arc, just a personal preference. I'm going to click on that leader line to start the tool. And then it's very similar to AutoCAD's dimension tool for annotation. You click on the object you want to annotate, and then click off to the side and type your text, F-wall. Okay. Now, that text is a little big for just a note. It'd be better to match it with some of the other text. You can just select the text with your selection tool, and with any luck, there will be some other text sizes available, in this case 3/32. And like in AutoCAD, when you drag your text, the arrow is adjusted so that it looks good. Again, you're looking for no overlaps on different elements and trying to be as clear as possible. This stage, while I'm still looking at the plan, that I like to put on some scale figures that are going to show up in my elevations and sections. Why do I do that now? It's just something I seem to think of at this point, kind of finishing touches. So we need to go and load some into our project. I'm going to choose Load Family. And there are actually some scale figures here in Revit's own Entourage folder. If I click on the mail, you'll see they kind of come out like this. I don't actually like those so much, so I'm going to go and grab one that is I got off of Revit City. Okay, and these are all called Scaly. I don't know why. It's kind of a lame name. Anyway, let's go here and we'll select. Actually, I'll select a bunch of them. I'll just select them all because I can't decide. Click Open. Okay, and what you'll see, by the way, a lot of files that we get off of Revit City, for example, and other sources they are old. They're old file formats. So allow Revit to upconvert them to our current version. Anyway, I'm just going to place the figure here. Maybe I'll place one, oh, I don't know, over here. Okay. And here we can use scaly man and woman. Now, the trick here is, you see how they're basically a sort of infinitely thin sliver of a person. They need to be oriented towards the view. So if I want this person to show up in the elevation facing off to the left, I'll need to rotate this this scale figure. Okay. And again, I could also do what I've done before, which is the control click drag. Saves me a little bit of time. You know, and I can also, I can also just stick in additional people. Let's see, what other ones do we have here? People. All right, we'll stick the guy over here. Put him behind the bar. Anyway, let me rotate him in the correct direction. And what I like to do sometimes is have those views open that where I'm putting the figures in, so that I can kind of, I don't know, see how they look, you know, compose them a little bit. The way that you do that, a kind of fun way to do that, is first of all, I'm going to close hidden windows, so I just have the plan open. Okay, so I'm going to close all my hidden windows. Now I'm going to open up, let's open up this section here, just double click on it, opens up the section. But now I'm going to type WT, and that stands for window tile, WT. And now I have both windows open at the same time. And I should be able to zoom around. Oh, those are really short people. I should be able to come into this view and move those people around. You just do have to be careful not to move them so that they're up off the floor. Interesting enough, you can kind of nudge them. If they're feeling a little lightheaded, you can send them kind of up into the sky. You can also control, click, drag, and put people upstairs too. Okay, and again, it's more kind of a matter of just livening up the view a little bit. Didn't I have another one in here? I think I did. Here, let me. I think we had the guy in here. Maybe he's a little taller. We can see if we can. Oh yeah, there he is. Okay, it's a very tall bar. Anyway, so this is a nice way to kind of compose your interior elevations and your sections. Just gives them a little bit of life, just like adding the wall base really gives them a lot of life. That's a nice way to work often, is to have these multiple views open. If you go to the view ribbon, what you'll see is a kind of graphic description of what I was just saying. Window tile. I have noticed that some people like this kind of cascaded window feature. It's just personal preference. So anyway, don't forget these scale figures. You should hide them in floor plan. Okay, and this is a kind of let me just select all instances visible in this particular view, and then I'm just going to hide them. Okay, you obviously don't want. Oh, except I've got these other guys that are apparently a different family type. Anyway, we'll hide it again. Oh, and here we go. Repeat hide elements is a quick way to do that. There you go. That's the basics of setting up, kind of preparing for printing. Now let's actually set up a sheet of drawings. Okay. And the way that you do that, you go down here. I'm in my project browser, and you'll notice so far we've really just been using these different kinds of views and looking at these different kinds of views. But down here there are a couple of things which are not really specifically views: legends, schedules and quantities, sheets, and then down below that you can actually access families that are loaded into the project and groups. to get at the sheets, to add a new sheet, it's pretty straightforward. You just right-click on where it says Sheets and choose New Sheet. Okay, very straightforward. I'm just going to go with this. Well, no, let's use a smaller title block. That's kind of a big title block. To load a new title block in, 30 by 42 is a pretty big sheet of drawings. Click the Load button. And guess what? There's a whole folder filled with title blocks. Okay, and we'll use the Arch D. See how it says A, B, C, D, E? That's actually a standard architectural size, 22 by 34. You can just double click on it to open it, or click the Open button. And now it's selected. And as a note, in projects like construction drawings, you often have multiple sheet sizes. Some are for sketches, some are for construction drawings, and some are for shop drawings. So there's a number of options. But anyway, we'll just go with the 22 by 34. Okay, and there we go. Isn't that a fine looking sheet? Actually, it's kind of a blah sheet. This is kind of the standard construction drawing kind of sheet, which is fine. By the way, you can select it, and the other sheet size is available here. See, it's a good deal bigger. That's really the thing that controls the I don't know, the page setup is just what sheet size. So make sure you know which size you're using, because otherwise when you go to print, you're going to have an unhappy surprise. So anyway, there are basic properties, bits of text on this sheet that work some of them work kind of like in AutoCAD. You can type a new value for these. For example, I like to number my first sheet A1. It's just the numbering standard that I'm used to. And you can even call it some name, existing conditions. Some of these are specific to the sheet. Some of them are actually global settings. So if I type in Endicott College here, any sheet that I have will take on that same name. Here, I'll just show you by, I'll make a new sheet. And I'll right-click on this, choose New Sheet, same title block, just so you can see. Now I have two. Notice, by the way, that Revit, it's so smart. It labeled it A2 because it noticed that I was using the kind of AIA standard architectural naming system. Anyway, see how it's labeled at Endicott College, even though it didn't have that before. And I could even call this, you know, what could I call it? Gallery space, because that's what the project is going to be. And what you'll notice now, I'll go back to A1. Look at that, it's filled it in. And you might say, gee, you know, is there somewhere where all of this project information is collected together? And I would say there sure is. Just go to the Manage ribbon, if you can manage it. And there's a whole button over here on the far left that says Project Information. Okay. And by the way, again, in an office, you might find that some of this information is controlled centrally. So anyway, you can type in whatever you want in here, and it will show up on any sheet that has made reference to these bits of project information. School of Art and Design. There we go. And the author is, I'll just put my initials in there. There you go, and the issue date is, you know, November 1st, or I don't know when this is due. I probably should know that. 2018. There you go. Okay, and what you'll see is that some of the information that has been made reference to shows up here. Okay, and that is kind of the basics of kind of sheet information. Now, what if you want to? What if your name isn't Autodesk and you want to edit this stuff? Well, you can't do that. It won't let you directly. What you have to do is edit this component. It's actually just a component like any other. So just double click on it, and it will bring up what's called the Family Editor. Now, we're not going to mess around too much with the Family Editor just yet, But needless to say, it's very similar to the main editing environment, except there are a lot fewer tools. Okay, and there are some specific to families. Now, for us, the one that's specific, that's really easy to do, is delete. You can just select the Autodesk icon and delete it. You can delete lines. You can move things. The objects in here are basically very similar to those in the main Revit environment. You can even insert an image. Just go up to the Insert ribbon and click on Image. Now mine, I have an image here of my kids, which is always fun. Get a chance to brag about my kids. And I'll put them in there. And there are very few editing tools for things like image. This is not Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop by any means. But you can see that there are some basic tools that you can use. Okay, and objects can be nudged, they can be moved, they can be scaled. So there are a large number of options in the family editor. Okay. Anyway, you can also, if you want, you can get rid of this stuff. My advice is, make it your own. If you don't like some of this text, just delete it. Who knows what all this stuff is. You can come in here and draw anything you want. My only advice is that if you keep this text, if you want it to have this kind of standard text, even if you, say, make the title block horizontal, just use the text that's in here. It has a special definition. It's called a label, and it has a link back to that information, that project information. So don't mess with those. Any additional text that you put in here, of course, you can just use the text tool. Just go to the Create ribbon, and there's text. And again, this is differentiated from the labels. Okay, and here, let's put in, I'll put in a big piece of text here to my project, and we'll call it, give me an A. I think that's a great name for my project. I don't know where I came up with that one. Anyway, like we saw before, there are some basic text editing options. You can center it. Now, the problem is it's a little small for something on a whole sheet border. What we're going to want to do is change and make our own type of text. Okay, and to do that, well, one probably would be good to check and see what's in here already. But they just have the 1/4 inch. So I'm going to choose Edit Type. And as we've done before when making new family members, new family types, I'm going to duplicate this, and let's make this a 1 inch tall. It's pretty big, but I think we can go for it. And obviously the text size is the thing we want to change. It's pretty straightforward. Text, fortunately, is pretty easy. And again, the font, you can choose from a list. It is kind of annoying that it doesn't give you a good preview of the text, but at least we can go and look in one of our other pieces of software to find out what this text is going to look like. Let's choose Times New Roman, I think, is a good one. There we go. Very common. All right. And OK. And you can see it's now a bigger piece of text. All right. And that's available now in this family. When you load it into your project, that font will be available in your main project too. So how do you load it into your project? Well, first of all, you have to save it, and you can't, or it will probably go bananas if you try and overwrite the existing title block. So what I would recommend is find a place to save it on your computer. As you can see, I've got a folder for all the stuff in this project. I'll save it right in there. Save. And now you can just load it into your project and close it. Okay. If you think you're going to be coming back and making further changes, be sure to leave it open. But anyway, I would strongly recommend getting rid of some of this junk that really has nothing to do with our project, and you can make some of the text a little bigger or even make it horizontal or whatever. I'll load it into the project. Okay. Now, of course, I'm in the wrong view here. I have to go to my A1 existing conditions, where I already have a title block. I can select the title block, and I should have my title block readily available, and you can see that it reflects the changes that I made. So now I have this beautiful sheet just waiting, just cannot contain itself. It would love to have some drawings on the sheet. How do you get drawings on this sheet? Well, first of all, if you remember the terminology from AutoCAD, drawings on a sheet are called viewports. Fortunately, it's a lot easier in Revit to get views onto your sheet. You don't need to mess around with creating viewports. You basically just find the drawing that you want to drag on, and I'm going to start with the floor plans, and you drag it onto the sheet. And boom, like that, you've got yourself a drawing on your sheet. Okay. Now, as we look at this drawing, you might say, well, first of all, that is an awfully big title, and I don't really need the exterior elevations because we're not dealing with those. This is an interiors project. Why is this thing so big? Well, let me show you why this thing is so big. When you have a drawing on a sheet, just like in AutoCAD, you can double click on it to edit it. See how everything gets kind of gray? I am now back editing this original drawing, so be very careful. Any changes you make are not just in this drawing, at least not for anything that's a model element, like a chair or a table or a wall. If you change it here, it will change everywhere. Annotation elements, text, dimensions, those will change only in this view. Even detail lines only change in this view. But just be careful. It's a common kind of rookie mistake to start moving stuff around and then wondering why it changed in a different view. Anyway, the reason this is so big is because there is a crop region. Crop regions determine how far out Revit is going to go. And I guess I went a little too fast there. Bad habits. The crop region is down here. If you click on this little, I don't know what it looks like. It looks like a little crop icon with a light bulb. Okay. If I click on it now, see how it's gone away. If I click on it again, it shows up, and it's an object that you can just click on. And what we can do is we can crop away, just by using these adjusters, we can crop away all the annotation that we don't really need to see. And often you'll see that people will have like pieces of furniture out in kind of outer space there. You can crop that away as well. Anyway, and that is how you can kind of change the size of this drawing. You can also make the crop region hidden by just clicking this button. I'll just show you what happens when I crop away part of the drawing. I can hide the crop region, and it just looks like the drawing disappears. If I turn off the cropping feature altogether, then it won't cut away the plan. Okay, so be aware there's a difference between turning on and off the crop region and just hiding it. Okay, let's bring it out here, hide it, and then double click outside the view to finish editing. Now, the other weird thing about viewports in Revit that's different than AutoCAD is that to move them, you have to kind of click in the middle of the viewport, in the middle of the drawing, just single click, and then you can drag the object around. And that's how you change this little leader that comes along with the view title. Okay? For whatever reason, you can't just click on the view title and change the length of that leader. However, if you want to move the view title, you do have to click on it. And the graphic standard for view titles is to have it kind of in the lower left of your drawing, but you guys can decide if you want to do that or have some other arrangement. Okay, and you'll see how it automatically knows the scale and the name of the title. What I'm going to do next is to go and drag in some of these other views of our project and clean them up like I did here. For example, here we'll drag in some sections. And I will make sure that they look the way I'm hoping. For example, this one has the crop region visible also. Okay, if I click off of it, see that little box? So I'll just double click on this and I'll hide that crop region. And then I can double click outside of it. And I can also shorten up this tail on the title, and I can move the title up here. I'll move it down here so it doesn't interfere. Also, as you drag views around, notice that they do occasionally try to align with each other. So when I drag in the next section and the elevations, they'll all want to be typically the levels aligned, although it doesn't always work perfectly. So I'll just jump forward to having all the drawings in there. On your sheet, one thing to notice, and I find I do this a lot, is that sometimes I want to move several drawings at once. Remember that these drawings are basically, this is sort of 3 objects and not like a million little objects, so they're pretty easy to select, and you can use Control to select more than one if you want. And I find I do spend a lot of time kind of nudging them back and forth, particularly because as I'm doing the drawings, I'll add things like dimensions and forget that that's actually going to take up some space on the sheet. The other thing you'll want to do is make sure, I'm going to move this out of the way, make sure that you take advantage of these alignment tools. You see this alignment tool, the dashed line? It's always a good idea to have plans corresponding with each other. They should line up either horizontally or vertically. And same with these elevations. My elevation symbol, or my elevation level here for the street level, should line up with the ground in the interior elevation. Like they should be continuous. And Revit will tell you that. It'll give you that indicator. In this case, see how that gives me the dashed line in the middle of that level. Now, I also find that as I'm working on these sheets, I spot things that I'm like, oh, I should have figured that one out. For example, in this view, I have a person inside view, and that looks kind of silly, so I can just hide them. Okay, and then double click out. So it's a good chance to kind of go through your drawings and make sure that they don't look completely silly. The other thing that you can do is rename and renumber things. So for example, this view is the transverse section. To rename it, you have to get in there close enough to select the text. Now it's tricky because you see how as I clicked on it, it gives me this highlight. I have to move around until it gets the highlight on the text itself and not on the overall view. See the difference? This one's selecting the viewport, this one's selecting the parameter. Anyway, and then you just click on it and you can edit it like any other piece of text. Okay? Did I spell that right? I think I spelled that right. The other thing you can do is change the numbers of the drawings. There are a couple of different numbering conventions. Either you do it the way you sort of do with English text, left to right, top to bottom. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Construction drawings, we often do it the other way, right to left, bottom to top. Why is that? You got me. I don't know. It's just one of those peculiar things. Anyway, as you line these things up, notice that as I line up these title blocks, you see how the title blocks want to align with each other. It's just a peculiar feature of architectural drawings that the title blocks should line up. So work with that. It tends to look neater when everything is lined up. Obviously, vertically, it's not always going to work, but you can try. If I drag this over, you should see a vertical alignment. Again, you want it to be as neat as possible. I like to add to my sheets is a graphic scale. If you remember from AutoCAD and SketchUp, we put these in to graphically indicate the dimension of different drawings. And in Revit, that's a symbol. So if you don't remember, symbols are under the Annotate ribbon. Okay, Annotate ribbon. Down here on the far right, just click Symbol, Load Family, and it's in the Annotations folder. And graphic scales, there are actually some out there that people. It's kind of a stylish thing. The ones that are in Revit are not all that stylish, but they're good enough. Just make sure you use the correct scale. This is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. Okay, I believe there are some nicer ones on Revit City. Anyway, that's a really nice thing as you've printed out your drawing to have on there. Well, so here we are. We've finished our sheet of drawings. By the way, I can double click on my scroll wheel to kind of center the sheet on my screen. What we want to do now is print. That's what it's all about. And how do you print? Well, you basically type Control P, which I'll do now. Obviously, you can't see it. And the first step in printing is to choose a printer. Because we tend to print on oversized sheets, it's absolutely critical that you use a printer that can handle that. That's probably not going to be your home printer. Those of you who have Adobe PDF, that is a great, if it's installed on the PC side of your computer, if you're running a Mac like I am, you can use it. If you're running a Mac like I am and you don't have Adobe on the PC side, or you just don't have Adobe, you'll have to install some kind of PDF writer on your computer. It won't do it on its own. There is a Microsoft Print to PDF, but I have found it's a little crashy. Anyway, it's called BullZip, which is a silly name for a printer, but it does happen to be free, and it has all the page sizes that we need. So I'm going to use that. The Adobe PDF printer works basically the same, but let me show you BullZip first. And once you've chosen the printer, just choose Properties. And in the Properties menu, it looks pretty rudimentary actually. We want the advanced features of the printer. Just click on that, and this is where we can change the paper size. Architectural sizes are up here at the top. Arch A, B, C, D. Arch D is 24 by 36. Remember when we were looking at title blocks, they had the similar terminology. You can change the print quality, although for us it's fine at 300 dpi. Click OK, and there you go. You're all set. If you want to use the Adobe printer, I'll click on the properties of that. It's a little more robust in terms of what it can do. You can see it figured out that I wanted Arch D also, and it has some print quality settings that are a little more sophisticated than in BullZip. Obviously, high quality print or oversized pages are going to work. Press quality, I believe, is the best. Just remember, the higher the quality, the bigger the file size. In this particular project, it's not going to be an issue. All right, I'll cancel out of that. Let me use the BullZip one since I just set it up. Now, as long as we are here, there's a couple other features that we should talk about. First of all, I like to start by looking at the current window and printing that. Even if I have many sheets, I just do the current window because that activates the preview button. And it's really important to preview your drawings first. Anyway, the other thing is you always want to check your print setup. That's over here. Just click on print setup, and obviously this is another chance to check and make sure you've got the printer you think you do, the page size that you think you do, and the orientation that you think you do. Now, when we print large format drawings, we always center them and we always zoom to 100%. We don't fit it to the page because that could cause the scale to get off. Again, you always print to 100%. Now there are a couple of other features here that are a little more obscure. Vector processing versus raster processing. Now you may remember when we talked about AutoCAD, it is a vector editing program. Raster processing is sort of like Photoshop. Those do tend to produce bigger files when you use raster processing, and it's also a lot slower. For us, and particularly for this project, let's use vector processing. If there are images in your drawing, make sure that they are set to a high quality or even presentation. In this case, it's just a picture of my kids, so they're fine as they are. Other than that, there's only one option down here that you're going to want to change, and that's this one right here, hide crop boundaries. Remember when we drew our interior elevations and we made the crop boundary really dark? Well, we need to uncheck this box so that that prints. And that's all you do. You can save it as a default value for your printer. I'll call this ArchD PDF or something like that. Okay, and click OK. And that's just, once you have it set up, no need to go through it all again. Now, like I mentioned, I can preview this drawing. You should do setup before preview. I'll click preview. What I really hope I'm going to see is my drawing kind of centered on the sheet. Now, if I don't, something is horribly wrong here, okay? And what it's doing is it's not centering the sheet, it's moving it off to the lower left. So how do I get back to the print menu? I just go to print, okay? And it should bring back the menu, and this is where I would check to see what's wrong with my setup. Oh, and that's what's wrong. It is indeed not centering it. So I will force it to do that. Click OK. We'll preview it one more time. And with any luck, it's perfect. Okay. Now, this does bring up one little bug that some users may find, which is that sometimes you will click the setup button and nothing happens. The menu will not pop up. This is a kind of known bug. It's known, but the solution is not known, so we can't exterminate the bug. The only way to get rid of it is to restart Revit. So save your drawing and hit restart. And in fact, as a rule, I always save my drawing before I go to print anyway, just because, I don't know, just because. Anyway, once you've done that, one other thing that you can do is this option down here, where you can choose which sheets you want printed. Now normally, if you just have one sheet, you don't need to mess with that. But if I click on this button here, it allows me to select whatever sheets I want to print. So for example, I could print the first 2 sheets of my drawing. I could even save that as my, like schematic design set or something like that, so that I could come back to it. Again, it's just one of those things where if you're in an office, you often do have to do multiple instances of printing, and that's really handy. Okay, click OK. And when you do have multiple sheets, what I like to do is combine them into a single PDF file. Okay, so you check that button. For us, we're just printing the current window, so you won't have to worry about anything. Don't worry about this file size. We will get a chance to browse and save the file after we click OK. And that is basically it for printing. Once you click OK, you can save your file onto your computer, and that's what you will use to print your drawings. Again, never print directly from Revit. That's a road to misery. Always create a PDF file first.